Please do. I don't want you to be a throat. See how it is.
I didn't know you have to sit.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه ومن استنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. اللهم اجعلنا منهم ومن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. اللهم تقبل منا قيامنا يا أرحم الراحمين. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to talk about a few things. Again, not a tafsir, but just a few points of reflection from Surah Al-Fatiha tonight, bi'idhnillah, which actually covers some of the most fundamental aspects of our deen. Actually, you could consider Surah Al-Fatiha that we recite in every salah a summary of all of Islam. So if somebody understands Surah Al-Fatiha properly, then they also have the ability to explain Islam to somebody else comprehensively, because it contains pretty much everything you need to know, or you need to explain to someone to give them a full picture of what Islam really represents. We're going to divide the study of Fatiha into three parts: the first three ayat, the middle ayat, and then the last three ayat. This is how the Fatiha is divided. Okay? And in the first three ayat, again, not a very detailed tafsir, very simple discussion, inshallah ta'ala. The first word, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And we're not going to even go into the discussion about the Basmala, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Some Mufassirun consider that to be the first ayah of the Fatiha. Others say no, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen is the first ayah. But we're going to start with Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen just to make the matter brief, inshallah ta'ala. The first part of that is Alhamdulillah. And at the very least, we have to translate Alhamdulillah as praise and gratitude belong to Allah. At the very least, you cannot really translate it praise belongs to Allah, and you can't just translate it thanks belong to Allah. The word hamd includes two things, praise and gratitude. These are two very separate things. Now, Arabic has a word for either of them. You could say madh or thana for praise, and you could say shukr for gratitude. So Alhamdulillah includes madh, includes thana, and it also includes shukr. It includes all of these things in one word. Now before we go any further, we have to understand the difference between praising Allah and thanking Allah. And before we talk about Allah, let's talk about just generally these two terms. Someone you praise isn't necessarily someone you thank. And someone you thank isn't necessarily someone you praise. These are mutually exclusive things. In other words, for example, if you see a really nice car in the parking lot, you're not going to thank the car, but you might do what? You might praise the car. This is a nice car. You don't go over to, pat the car on the hood and say thank you so much. You don't do that. It doesn't make any sense, right? On the other hand, you have, a situation. Let's take a religious situation. It's obligatory on all believers, and this is not something new in our messenger's revelation. It's been there from the very beginning of all the messengers, alayhi salatu wasalam, that we have to be grateful to our parents. We have to be grateful to our parents. Now, Ibrahim alayhi salam, of course, also has to be grateful to his parents. So he is grateful to Azar. We know Azar, the name of his father, is mentioned in the Quran. He's grateful to him. But does he praise his father? What the father does, is it worthy of praise or criticism? What the father does should be criticized. It shouldn't be praised. So he's grateful to him, but he's not praising him, right? So you can praise someone without thanking them, and you can thank someone without praising them. These are the two different things. Now when we talk about Allah Azza wa Jal, we say Alhamdu. We don't say Al-Madhu wa Shukru Lillah. We don't separate the two words. We put them under one word, which is Hamd. This has very profound implications. It means everything that Allah does, we thank Him for it. And everything Allah does, we at the same time praise Him for it. We do two things for everything we know about Allah. For everything we appreciate about Allah Azza wa Jal, we thank Him for it, we praise Him for it. This changes our attitude towards Allah very drastically from people of other faiths. You may know Christians and other people of other faiths in your circles. You may even know some Muslims who don't know they're doing very well. And sometimes they say things about God, or say things about Allah that are far from appropriate. Have you ever heard things like, if God is so great, how come there's so much war? How come there's so much hunger? How come there's so much famine? How come there's so much disease? How come there's so much chaos in the world? Where is God when all of this is going on? I was actually on a flight this is true story. I was on a flight back from Las Vegas. It was a Quran conference, I swear. Okay, so I was on a flight back from Vegas, and next to me was an old Jewish couple. And these are both they're Holocaust survivors. Right? And they see me reading Quran, and the old man, he says to me, why don't you read this to me? Recite it in its language. I like to hear it. So I recited some Quran to him. We just started talking. This is a long flight back to New York. Right? It's a really long flight, 5 hours. So we're talking, and halfway through, yeah, we believe in God too. We also have faith. And like half an hour into that conversation, yeah, actually I don't believe in God. I said, what? We started half an hour ago. You said you have faith too. He said, well, where was God when the Holocaust happened? Right? In other words, they're kind of in a conflict. On the one hand, they say they believe. On the other hand, how can we believe if this and this happened? Etc. Now the thing is, our first response as believers is we understand that everything Allah does, whether we understand it in our head or not, we are grateful to Allah for everything He does, and we praise Allah for everything He does. Now the matter of understanding the wisdom in it and the larger plan, we may or may not understand. But we still have to have this attitude. Many a times you may have heard this parallel, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى, a parent is giving medicine to the child. The medicine tastes bad, right? The medicine tastes bad. But the mother, when she gives him the medicine, when the child understands better, what are they going to do? They're going to thank, right? And they're also going to praise. But at that moment, what are they doing? They're complaining because they don't know what else is going on. There are two worlds at work. There's a world you can see with your eyes, and there's a world you cannot see. Alim al-ghayb. Now we see things in alim al-shahada. We see the world, the things in the world of the seen. And we start making complaints without realizing that there is another world, a world we don't see. And because Allah sees both of them and His plan is in conjunction with both of them, whatever He does, we thank Him for and we praise Him for. Another wonderful thing about this beginning of the Fatiha is we don't say, the hadith tells us that Allah Azza wa Jalla has at least 99 names, right? And you know many of them. But we don't say Alhamdulillah Khaliq, Alhamdulillah Malik, Alhamdulillah Rahim, right? Alhamdulillah Hakim. Praise and gratitude belongs to the wise, the knowledgeable, the powerful, the creator. We don't use any of those names. Which one do we use? We use Allah Azza wa Jalla. In Fatiha we use specifically Allah. And there's a profound benefit in that. And the benefit is, if we thank Allah for thank and praise Allah for being the Khaliq, then the only thing you're appreciating about Him is that He created. If we say Hamd belongs to the wise, the only thing you thank Him for is what? His wisdom. That's it. If you say praise belongs to the merciful, the only thing you praise and appreciate is His mercy. But if you want to praise everything about Allah in one, the only thing you're left to say is what? Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah covers all the other thing that's really interesting and unique about the way the language of the ayah, of just that phrase is structured. Praise belongs to Allah, as opposed to saying I praise Allah or we praise Allah. Halfway down the Fatiha we say na'budu iyaka, na'budu, we enslave ourselves, we worship, but we don't say nahmadullah, we praise Allah. Even though the Khatib says that, Alhamdulillah alladhi nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu, we say we praise. So what's the difference between saying praise belongs to Allah, praise and gratitude belong to Allah, and saying we praise and we are grateful to Allah? The difference between these is very profound. When we say we praise Allah, we have not always been around. And we will not always be around. But the praise of Allah has always been around and it will always be around. And when I say we praise Allah or I praise Allah, I didn't say anything about the rock and the tree and the sky and the earth and everything else that praises Allah, right? I only talked about who? Myself. But when we say Alhamdulillah, praise and gratitude belong to Allah, it means for all time, all places, and all instances of that praise belong to Allah, whether we counted it or not. Whether we do hamd or not, praise still belongs to Allah. It's independent of us. SubhanAllah. This is Allah's introduction to Himself in the Fatiha. And the very next term, the first description of Allah, you could say the ism that's used for Allah Azza wa Jal is Rabb. Alhamdulillahi Rabb. And this is a very profound thing in our deen. You have to understand this. This is the heart of the matter. Ya ayyuhan nas u'budu rabbakum. This is the heart of the matter. Rabb in English translation is commonly translated as Lord. That's how it's commonly translated nowadays. The classical Arabic meaning includes a few things. As-Sayyid, wal-Murabbi, wal-Mun'im, wal-Qayyim. Right? There are a few things in it. the one who's in charge, Malik also, the one who owns, the one who has complete control and authority over something, the one who ensures and takes care of something completely. They're in charge of the complete taking care of something. And then on top of that, the one who gives them gifts. And most importantly, the master. Now when we translate that as Lord, when we translate Alhamdulillah as, or Rabbil Alameen as Lord of the worlds, tell me, where do you use the word Lord nowadays? In common language. We don't really use the word Lord much anymore, except maybe of the rings or something, right? So otherwise you don't really use the word Lord. But you know the classical meaning of the word Rabb? It's closer to the English term master. Because Rabb was used for the owner of a slave. And what do we use that in English for that? When somebody owns a slave, what do they call them? A master. And so the slave is called Abd, that's slave, and the master is called Rabb. Allah tells us Alhamdulillah, and then the first thing He tells us about Him is what? That He is the master. And He's Rabb. If He's telling us that He is Rabb, what does that make us immediately? It makes us slaves.